out the book Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. I read a section of this, I think like 2 weeks ago or something like that. So I'm going to keep it ongoing where I read little sections every week or whatever, sprinkled throughout my other videos. So, trigger warning, this is a very emotional book. It took me a very long time to actually read through. I usually read it in sections because I was very much emotionally affected. So, you've been warned. Chapter 2, page 25. Recognizing the emotionally immature parent. It can be hard to look at your parents objectively because it might feel like you're betraying them, but that isn't the motive here. In this book, our mission is not to disrespect or betray your parents, but to finally see them objectively. I hope you'll see that the discussions of emotionally immature parents in this book are informed by a deep understanding of the reasons for their limitations. As you'll see, much of their immature, hurtful behavior is unintentional. By viewing these and other aspects of your parents more dispassionately, you can understand things about yourself and your history that you might have not thought of before. Most signs of emotional immaturity are beyond a person's conscious control, and most emotionally immature parents have no awareness of how they've affected their children. We aren't trying to blame these parents, but to understand why they are the way they are. My hope is that any new insights about your parents you've gained from reading this book will have the result of radically increasing your own self-awareness and emotional freedom. Fortunately, as adults, we have the ability and independence to assess whether our parents can really give us the care and understanding we desire. To judge this objectively, it's important to understand not just your parents' superficial behavioral characteristics, but also their underlying emotional framework. Once you understand these deeper traits and learn what to expect from your parents and how to label their behaviors, you're far less likely to be caught unaware by their limitations. Keep in mind that your thoughts about your parents are private. They may never know what you've gotten from this book, nor do they need to. The goal is for you to gain the self-confidence that comes from knowing the truth of your own story. You aren't betraying your parents by seeing them accurately. Thinking about them objectively can't hurt them, but it can help you. As you saw in the previous chapter, emotionally immature parents can have devastating impacts on their children's self-esteem and relationships in adulthood. The effects can range from mild to severe, depending on the parent's level of immaturity, but the net effect is the same. The children feel emotionally unseen and lonely. This erodes their children's sense of their own lovability and can lead to excessive caution about emotional intimacy with others. Personality pattern versus temporary emotional regression. There's a difference between a pattern of emotional immaturity and a temporary emotional regression. Anyone can briefly lose emotional control or become impulsive when tired or stressed. And most of us have plenty to cringe about when we look back on certain moments in our lives. However, when a person has a personality pattern of emotional immaturity, certain behaviors show up repeatedly. These behaviors are so automatic and unconscious that people are unaware of doing them. Emotionally immature people don't step back and think about how their behavior impacts others. There's no cringe factor for them. They seldom apologize or experience regret. Defining maturity. Before we explore emotional immaturity, let's take a look at emotionally mature functioning. Emotional maturity isn't a murky matter of opinion. It has been well and famously studied. Emotional maturity means a person is capable of thinking objectively and conceptually while sustaining deep emotional connections to others. People who are emotionally mature can function independently while also having deep emotional attachments, smoothly incorporating both into their daily life. They are direct about pursuing what they want, yet do so without exploiting people. They've differentiated from their original family relationships sufficiently to build a life of their own. They have a well-developed sense of self and identity and treasure their closest relationships. Emotionally mature people are comfortable and honest about their own feelings and get along well with other people, thanks to their well-developed empathy, impulse control, and emotional intelligence. They're interested in other people's inner lives and enjoy opening up and sharing with others in an emotionally intimate way. When there's a problem, they deal with others directly to smooth out differences. Emotionally mature people cope with stress in a realistic, forward-looking way while consciously processing their thoughts and feelings. They can control their emotions when necessary, anticipate the future, adapt to reality, and use empathy and humor to ease difficult situations and strengthen bonds with others. They enjoy being objective and know themselves well enough to admit their weaknesses. Personality traits associated with emotional immaturity. Emotionally immature people, on the other hand, tend to have quite a different set of behavioral, emotional, and mental characteristics. Because these personality characteristics are all interconnected, people who display one are often prone to the others. In the sections that follow, I'll briefly describe various characteristics of emotionally immature people. They are rigid and single-minded. As long as there's a clear path to follow, emotionally immature people can do very well, sometimes reaching high levels of success and prestige. When it comes to relationships or emotional decisions, their immaturity becomes evident. They are either rigid or impulsive and try to cope with reality by narrowing it down to something manageable. Once they form an opinion, their minds are closed. There's one right answer, and they can become very defensive and humorless when people have other ideas. They have low stress tolerance. Emotionally immature people don't deal with stress well. Their responses are reactive and stereotyped. Instead of assessing the situation and anticipating the future, they use coping mechanisms that deny, distort, or replace reality. They have trouble admitting mistakes and instead discount the facts and blame others. Regulating emotions is difficult for them, and they can often overreact. Once they get upset, it's hard for them to calm down, and they expect other people to soothe them by doing what they want. They often seek comfort in intoxicants or medication. They do what feels best. Young children are ruled by feelings, whereas adults consider possible consequences. As we mature, we learn what feels good isn't always the best thing to do. Among emotionally immature people, however, the childhood instinct to do whatever feels good never changes. They make decisions on the basis of what feels best in the moment and often follow the path of least resistance. They are subjective, not objective. Emotionally immature people assess situations in a subjective way, not objectively. They don't do much dispassionate analysis. When they interpret situations, how they're feeling is more important than what is actually happening. What is true doesn't matter nearly as much as what feels true. They have little respect for differences. Emotionally immature people are annoyed by other people's differing thoughts and opinions, believing everyone should see things their way. The idea that other people are entitled to their own point of view is beyond them. They may be prone to making social gaffes because they don't have enough awareness of other people's individuality to avoid being offensive. They're only comfortable in role-defined relationships where everyone holds the same beliefs. The quieter, nicer ones are the same, but in a quieter, nicer way. They're egocentric. Normal children are egocentric as youngsters, but the self-involvement of emotionally immature adults is more childish and childlike. Unlike children, their egocentrism lacks joy and openness. Emotionally immature people are self-preoccupied in an obsessed way, not with the innocence of a child. Young children are self-centered because they're still commanded by pure instinct, but emotionally immature adults are commanded by anxiety and insecurity, like wounded people who must keep checking their intactness. They live in a perpetual state of insecurity, fearing their defenses high, fearing they'll be exposed as bad, inadequate, or unlovable. They keep their defenses high so other people can't get close enough to threaten their shaky sense of self-worth. Before you start feeling sorry for them too, keep in mind their defenses work seamlessly to keep these underlying anxieties below the level of awareness. And they would never see themselves as being insecure or defensive. More on recognizing these behavior patterns coming soon.